Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Starbright podcast. Once again, if you enjoy our work and what we're doing here, please like and subscribe. There's links to socials down below. If you want to join the Discord community, thanks again to Star for allowing us to be here, on which we are recording this. If you want to chat at us, at that kind of thing, there should be a linked invite there in the description. You're welcome to click on it and go look at it. I don't really have anything else, any newsworthy things this week to go over. So this week's episode is all about littles and pets, if I remember that correctly, and I think I do.
We are. We are.
And so we can kind of jump into this now. I suppose, I guess we can kind of separate them. We'll talk about littles, I guess, first, and then pets after, if that makes sense to the both of you.
Works for me.
Yeah, actually works perfectly fine.
Okay, so now I'm not really one to talk about littles all that much. I'm not a little myself as much as I've been a daddy and a caregiver a time or two. But a little is someone that has a space where they go. I don't know if you'd call it exactly a headspace, but a pattern of behavior they fall into where they act younger than they are. And that could be a very large range of ages, right?
I would argue that's not even entirely true. Like, you don't necessarily have to act younger than you are to be a little. I would say there is a subclass of littles who act very much so their age, but they are still baby and they still need to be taken care of. And that's where I fall. I don't regress, but I am baby.
Well, I think there's a difference between regressing and just liking to act like you're 5. I think there's a big regressing because regressing is out of your control, right?
Look,
age regression is an actual mental thing. It's not something you control. I would argue that that's actually, if you are purely a regressor, you are not a little, because that is not your choice. That is something traumatic that is doing that to you. And that's a whole different thing. There was a big Facebook argument I saw about that in one group just recently.
Yes.
About that, because someone was saying, I can't control it if it happens in public, and they ended up breaking up with their partner because of it, who had a point, a valid point that, hey, I find it, humiliating when that happens in public, which, maybe that's rude, maybe that's not. I mean, and he didn't enjoy it, and she was like, but I can't help it.
I feel like that's a valid argument for anything, though. Like, just because it's something you can't help doesn't mean that your partner's required to deal with it. And I know this is probably an unpopular take, but like, if your partner really doesn't like something that you can't control, then you just shouldn't be together.
I agree.
Like, it's not something they can't control, that they don't like it either. That's not something that either of you are at fault for. You're just not compatible at that point.
But that's where I draw the line between a regressor and like a little, though, is because, like, if you can control it, then obviously you can say, okay, I won't do this in public, and then that's fine. And then it's a choice and it's out of your control. And then to me, you're a little. Even if you just, like you said, even if you just like acting baby rather than actually like thinking you're 5, or whatever level you go to, if it's under your control, that would make you a little.
For me, it's like it's not like I emotionally or intellectually, anything like that, revert to being 5. And if you start treating me like I'm 8, we will fight. But I'm still going to be wearing pink and bows, and I've got a little bunny hoodie that I wear, and I'm very, very cutesy. And I do enjoy the caregiver element where somebody does. It's almost like we were talking about it. It's actually very similar to a TPE role where somebody is actually making decisions for me. And I do enjoy that aspect. And I have the girly little frilly parts to that, but I'm not actually regressing or actually going back in my age. It's just, a part of the control scenario that I enjoy. And I think that is technically still in the little spectrum, but it doesn't have to be. And I think that there are different sides of the little spectrum that we do have to acknowledge. Because I've had multiple people be like, well, all littles have to have an age that they regress to. So what age do you regress to? And I'm like, well, that's not really always how it works.
No, I agree with you on that. You don't actually have to have like an age that you go back to. You can just act childish, and I do think that's valid.
Yeah, and I'm like, yeah, so what? Like, I do little, like, bratty little things that are very much so not acting my age, but I'm also not actually regressing. So I think there's a lot of area and gray area in the spectrum that you have to acknowledge. While it is still technically on the little spectrum, it's not inherently little or juvenile or regressing behavior. And I think that it is harmful in many ways to actually say that littles have to regress. At that point, you're kind of gatekeeping little space. And I don't like that. I don't think that that's really fair or appropriate. Just because that's how you and maybe even the majority of littles experience little space doesn't mean it's fair to put that on everybody.
See, and if you're like properly regressing, like what would be the word for it? Like actually like traumatic regressing, I would argue that's not being a little at all. And I think so I want to make this distinction only because because it's not in your choice. You know, you have a trauma space that you're pushed into that pushes you back into an age. You have now lost agency for yourself beyond, you know, that of what you are at that age. So if you regress to being a 6-year-old, you know, and all of a sudden you can't make your own decisions anymore, the problem with calling yourself a little and saying like, oh, this is okay, well, this is still inherently like a kink space, and I don't think kinks are inherently sexual. At least the vast majority of them don't have to be.
Yes.
But there are a lot of people out there that will still look at that as, you know, as being something that, you know, now it's okay to sexualize it because, you know, it's still something in the kink space. You know, and unless you've discussed this beforehand and said, hey, don't do anything sexual with me when I'm in my little space, I can't make that choice, I can't consent to it, you know, then
Yes.
it's very possible you're going to meet someone who's going to, only because they think, oh, this is kink space, you called yourself a little, not knowing that, you know,
Yeah.
you're just full on regressing and you can no longer consent to things. You know, that's why I
Yes.
think that line is so important to draw, because if you can't consent to it, it's now bad.
Yes, there's a lot of really, really shady things that can happen once we get into talking about sexualizing a little space. And I am not a huge fan of sexualizing a little space. I understand that some people do. And I think that in some ways that could fall under the CNC umbrella. So I'm not here to judge. Like, that's on you. I find it uncomfortable because it's sexualizing juvenile behaviors. And I feel like it's kind of getting into problematic territory. I don't like to see it. I'm not a fan of it. I think that it is inherently problematic. But, you know, if that's something that somebody's really into, then it's not what I'm into. I'm not going to get involved in that. I'm not super comfortable seeing it, but I also am not going to judge somebody too harshly for it. However, I definitely don't like to see it on my timeline if I can avoid it. When we get into like sexualizing little space, to me, it kind of reads like sexualizing minors, but knowing that you'll get in trouble for being with a minor, so you're not getting with a minor. And I just don't like that. I know that's probably not always how it is, but it makes me uncomfortable. If somebody is sexualizing me because they think I look young for my age, that also makes me uncomfortable. I am aware that I look young. I'm very aware of that. If that's the main reason somebody likes me, I'm very uncomfortable with that.
Now, you've mentioned that before, where you've had messages from people who think that you're like just out of high school and only came on to you because of that. And yeah, that's creepy.
It makes me super uncomfortable when people find out that I'm, you know, on the little spectrum, and they're like, oh, so like I can put a diaper on you and fuck you that way. Bro, first of all, I'm not into diapers. Secondly, like that's kind of a weird reason to hit me up. Like,
I
mean, first of all, you don't really understand that I'm not a little like that. Like, that's not how far I go. I'm not going into the huge age regression gaps. I just feel like it's super problematic. I actually had I think, Will, you're in my server, but I don't think Drow is yet. I need to send you the link. In my server, I reposted a problematic kinks thing. It was like the problematic or the kind of fucked up edition. And I reposted it and then I deleted it because I read it over fully and I was like, holy shit. Some of it was like minor, like age play, like where you were like pretending to be a minor where you couldn't consent. And I was like, I don't know, man, I don't like this. And one of the kinks was like mental instability. It was just things that were entirely inappropriate. And I was like, well, this isn't just kind of fucked up. Like, this is like, I have to go in and edit this. I'm not going to post this in the way that it is. And we had a whole conversation about it because like I didn't realize like how bad it was. And then I went through and had to completely overhaul huge sections because it was getting into things where it's like age play, but how far does it go until age play is inappropriate and problematic? And that's a conversation that comes up quite a bit on Facebook. I'm sure Will and Drow, you've both seen this. We've had huge debates about sexualizing little space. Some people are very for it. Yeah, some people are very against it. I'm personally against it. I don't like to see it, but I understand if it's something that you're into with your partner and there's an understanding that is not inappropriate. But I think that it's kind of a dangerous thing to get into without really knowing the person that you're with. Like, are they doing this because they're actually into minors, or are they doing this because they're into you and are trying to incorporate your other kinks? That's kind of where I get sussed out of it.
Yep, I agree with that completely. I think it is all up to, you have to be very careful that it's because, like you said, it's because of you and not, the kink, that they're interested in, because liking that
Yeah.
specifically, that's a huge ass red flag. But if they're only doing
Yeah,
it for you because they want to incorporate, what you're into,
yeah.
that's different. And especially if it's something you want, if the little,
Yes.
in advance says,
It
hey,
should be
please do,
little
then
led at all times.
yeah.
The little should be leading at all times, I think, in order to make this less problematic. This also is something that comes up in pet play, but a lot of it is consent. Because if you are in little space, like mentally in little space, consent becomes a gray area, which is why I think CNC comes into play in a lot of little space sexualization. Because there
Right.
is inherently open ended, like, can you really consent if you are regressing emotionally to being this young? I would argue that it's a very, very suspiciously gray area. And I don't feel comfortable with it personally. I know some people might be, and more power to them if they're comfortable with that. Far be it from me to keep somebody from playing CNC the way that they want to, because I get it. I really do. Some people might think the stuff that I'm into is way too fucked up for them. Personally, I couldn't go into CNC age play. I don't think that that's something I could do. But I understand that that is something that does occur. And I do think that we have to acknowledge that it falls under the CNC umbrella, because there is dubious consent at that point. There
Um,
is a
I
power
don't think
dynamic that exists that's very extreme.
I don't think dubious is even a good enough word to cover it. I mean, it's if you're like actually regressing to something before the age of, well, children can't consent. That's just how society is. Children cannot consent.
Exactly.
So again, unless you've set this up beforehand, and the little wants this, and it's only being done because the person wants to incorporate this and is willing to do that for the little, for like pretty much any other reason, children cannot consent. You are specifically,
Agreed.
taking advantage there in a way that it would
Yeah.
otherwise be illegal with someone who actually was of that age. It's the same level of
Yes.
fucked up.
That's why I'm arguing very strongly. Like, we have to acknowledge there is an element of CNC here. If we're going to acknowledge that it is ever okay for there to be sexualization of little space, we have to acknowledge that that inherently falls under the CNC umbrella, no matter how you look at it, because the consent is going to be sketchy. And yeah, sure, both parties are legally of consenting age, which is why I think that we can even acknowledge that this is something that could happen. It's the only reason we can acknowledge this is something that could happen. But if you're acknowledging, especially in the case of somebody who has a trauma response that is regressing to an earlier age emotionally, we really get into sketchy, dubious consent area where I'm just like, for me personally, I can't do that. I can't tolerate that. I don't want to see it. But like, I understand that it could be an important part of somebody else's kink. And I don't want to say that it's inherently wrong just because I don't understand it for them. But I find it uncomfortable. And it's one of the few things within kink that I really don't want to see.
Well,
Like,
it's
there's a lot of things that I may not be into that that I can see on my timeline. I'm just going to be like, oh, not my thing, but good for you. That's one of those things I will just, see less of this, because
yeah. I
I
mean, I
don't want
mean,
to see it.
it's like all things in kink. As long as everyone involved is happy, healthy, and safe with what's going on, all the more power to you. But yeah,
Exactly.
that's an area that I don't particularly want to see either.
Yeah,
Um,
it makes me super uncomfortable just given the fact that a lot of my run-ins with older doms have been purely because they thought I was younger and just barely legal, or possibly early before I was legal, purely
that
based on my looks. And that makes me uncomfortable. That is predatory.
as
And
it should.
therefore a lot of the doms that talk to me purely because they believe that I'm little, it makes me a little uncomfortable, because are they talking to me because it's me, or are they talking to me because they think that they can take advantage of somebody who's, possibly immature
Yeah.
and not emotionally mature, that they think is super young? Is that why they're talking to me, or are they talking to me because it's me? And I really want to get to know somebody long before we get to that conversation.
You got anything to throw in there, Joe, on this topic?
No, actually, you're so far like everybody's kind of nailed most of the points. Even I was gonna discuss. So no,
I
actually
apologize.
everything. No, it's okay. I don't.
You guys know
I
you can
actually
tell me
enjoy
to
it.
shut the fuck up whenever. I just talk.
We
Just
No,
so
no,
everyone
it's good. It's
knows
good. That's what
that
we're here
uh,
for. We
Will,
all just talk.
Will
yeah, yeah,
here had to tell me to shut up before we even started this because I was talking when he was trying to start the podcast.
yeah. No, it was an intense conversation too. And we had to stop in the middle of it.
No, this is actually our norm, though.
Yeah, pretty much. All
We're
right,
usually in the
so
middle of a conversation.
we'll jump to another thing here. So I've noticed when I've been part of communities that involved littles, and there was a lot of discussion about littles, whether it be on Discord and Facebook. I've noticed a lot of people that join because they weren't sure whether they were little or not, and they just
Yes.
felt kind of like curious about it. Like, what are some
Yes.
things that you feel, Mouse, that would make you fall under the umbrella of a little that people might not be aware
So
that would apply to them?
I think that little is I discussed this when I was talking about brats too. I think that brats are far more widespread than we think. There's a negative connotation to it, and I think there's a negative connotation to littles as well, where a lot of things that I think would possibly be seen as primarily just a caregiver care, or a, what would you call it, like somebody who's receiving care, the person being cared for, not necessarily recognize themselves as little. If you're doing this and you're doing it in a way where it's kind of like daddy is doting on you, I would say that there is inherently an element of being little to that. And I think that there is, almost anytime you run into a daddy dom scenario, there's almost always a little element to that where you are seen as the little one, as the person being cared for. And there's almost always a little space element to that. Sometimes it's in the aesthetic, sometimes it's just in the vibe. Like, you are very much so seen as somebody being cared for. And I think that anytime you get into that like caregiver, caree relationship, you're almost really treading into little space territory. I think that there's definitely an extreme where, of course, we have the regressors. And in my server in particular, we have a little space area that is specifically for littles who cannot be around adult conversation that might find it triggering. So we have like cartoon spaces, coloring spaces, stuffy spaces where we can talk about stuffies. But like, those spaces are also open to people who identify as littles that do not rely on those spaces. I'm there. I enjoy posting my recent stuffy collection because I love squishmallows and stuffies. Like, I love them. They're my favorite thing. I get really excited when I get a new one, and I always show it off when I get a new one. And
Mm-hmm.
things like that, I think they inherently kind of lean into little space in some degree. And I would argue that a lot more people probably lean into little territory than they necessarily believe. Just as I argue strongly that a lot of people lean into brat space, even when they don't think that they do. If you're just enjoying sassing a little bit, like I made this distinction when I was talking about brats, like the distinctions of brats, like we have a whole section of bratty littles where they are littles who just want to back up, but at the core, they are still littles. They're still being good girls for daddy. And that is what they want at the end of the day. They want to make daddy happy, and they're just backsassing to be playful or to get something or to get attention, to get your attention in some way. But they're still littles. And I think that the overwhelming number of brats that I ran into are bratty littles,
So what you're
whether they
saying
realize that they're
is,
littles or not.
if the next person you're with wanted to, punish you in a funny, endearing way for being bratty, they should build a wooden prison for your stuffies and then start locking them up, as surrogate punishments for you.
I don't think you understand how traumatized and upset I would be. It would not even be a punishment. That would be emotional torture, and I would actually cry. Like,
Oh
I would be
no.
upset. I will have to show you guys eventually. I have an absurd number of stuffies, like way, way too many stuffies. And since I became a page owner, that has grown exponentially.
Yep. Yeah.
I already
Does
had a
not
lot.
surprise me.
We could also get into the whole collection of unsolicited sex toys that I've gathered, but like, that's another conversation. Unsolicited, might I add. I did not ask for these; they just showed up. But like, I have a lot of squishmallows too that I gained just from running a page, and people just send me stuffed animals, and I appreciate it. I love stuffed animals. I get very excited whenever I get a stuffed animal. Like, it is one of my favorite things. Coloring books and stuffed animals are two of the most common purchases for me, which is funny because I don't advertise myself as a little very often. But still, the overwhelming number of things that are bought for me are Squishmallows and coloring books. I don't know if I give little
Huh.
vibes or they just assume that I'm little based off of my page. I don't talk about being little very often,
I think you
but
do to a
90% of the
degree.
gifts that to a degree, but like I think it's also just like the way I speak and my energy. People just assume that I'm a little more so than I actually necessarily. I'm not really big on the like acting like a baby spectrum or acting like a child spectrum, but I have a huge number of coloring books and a huge number of um, squishmallows, and I spend quite a lot of time coloring actually. And not everyone knows this about me, but they still send me squishmallows and coloring books, even though I don't talk about these things all the time. So I'll have to show you guys my collection. I had to buy like hanging stuffy holders because I had nowhere to
What?
put them. I bought a chair. I bought a full fuzzy chair, a foldable chair, just to stack stuffies on because I didn't know what else to do with them. I had no more room on my bed. My bed was
Damn.
full. And I didn't know what to do. So I got these like hanging like toy things
Wait,
for
wait, wait, wait,
closets
wait.
and I
You
have
mean
this stuff full.
they were relaxing on their bed, all nice and quiet, and you just removed them from it? What the hell's wrong with you? That was their bed.
They were I could stack everything on the bed and it would still not fit. And I have a queen size bed for myself.
You got to start a
They would
gladiator
not have fit.
contact. Make them fight for the space. Make it a reward.
I have remember those big peeps were popular at Walmart last year? I have like a 3-4 foot long peep that's bright green. I have that, and that takes up the bulk of my bed, and it sits on my bed all the time.
God
And
damn.
yeah, I have so many, and like this is probably like one of the most clear signs that I'm little. Well, subby in general, but like little. I have so fucking many stuffies, and I get so excited for them. I get so excited, and they all have names. I can go through and list the names of all of them. If I send you guys pictures, I will put the names on them because they are all named. That is probably where the biggest
That's
thing of me
cute.
being little comes out. Is I have named stuffies. I have a huge coloring book selection, and I wear a lot of pink fuzzy stuff. I actually have a pink bunny hoodie that I wear to game in, and a lot of people didn't realize that I had this, but I do. I have a pink winter, or no, I have a white cat winter coat too that I'm going to be wearing this year. It's got paws on it and ears, and I'll be wearing that for winter.
Nice.
But like most
Actually,
people don't necessarily realize that I am technically little, and if they do, they think I'm more little than I am. But I'm like in that middle ground there.
What were you gonna say, Joe?
I was gonna say, littles and stuffies never, or you know, like that's not common at all. Nope, not at all.
He's right,
No,
not at all.
not
It's very weird.
not a thing. Couldn't possibly be.
So what would be some activities someone could do with a little if they were their partner? Like what would you what would you be into?
I actually have a really great example. My previous partner and I, we went last weekend. We went to I took her out. I took her out to Build-A-Bear after like a very intense scene the following day. So it's just like the things that I also took her to the aquarium. Like like, most people enjoy little things like that. But with her, it was more it was a lot more intimate because like you're just out doing activities and they can be all cute and little as much as they want, but at the same time like enjoying themselves. And plus, Build-A-Bear is like a little's like haven.
Yes, it is.
Like
It is every little's dream date is to go build a Build-A-Bear.
Oh yeah, and I even did the whole like ritual or whatever it's called, like where the thing you do with the heart and everything.
Out myself, I've never actually gotten a Build-A-Bear. That's one thing I've never gotten a Build-A-Bear. I've never actually gone with a Dom to get a Build-A-Bear before. I don't own one.
The ritual with the heart? What is this?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you got to do it.
I don't know what it is.
There's a whole thing with the heart before you put the heart in the bear. It's a whole thing.
Yep. It's fun.
What's involved?
It's a lot.
Yeah.
I don't remember the details because like I only did it once and I was like, this would be a fun thing.
I've never done it. I know only like the bare basics that there is like a whole process, and it's like it's really like how you like give the bear its personality. It's like everything you do to give it the heart is what makes it so special.
Yep.
Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, obviously, there's a big upcharge for the fact that it's such a special bear, and it's really just a bear. But at the same time, it's a very emotional thing to do, and a lot of littles love going to Build-A-Bear. I would argue though,
Exactly.
that pretty much any activity can be made little friendly. Like
Exactly.
fall scenes right now. Fall is a great time. Go pumpkin picking with your
Pumpkin
sub,
patches.
your little go do that. Get face painting, get your apple cider donuts and your apple cider, and just do the fun fall things, and it can be very little friendly. Any of these things, haunted houses, hay rides, these are all extremely potentially little friendly events. No, literally any part of it. A lot of subs, whether they're little or not, they want to watch Disney movies. So watch a Disney movie with your sub in little space. Like they don't even have to be in little space. Do something that kind of feeds their inner child. Get them a coloring book, let them color, have them color you a picture as a punishment, even like something that there's a whole brat coloring books out there. You can get them on Etsy. I've seen a whole bunch of them where I hate the make me motif. I've gone over this before, but there's like a whole bunch of like make me, and I'm doing air quotes here, coloring books that are meant to be like punishments for you to color in. Like you punish me for going outside of the lines, so you're making me do another one, that kind of thing. There's all sorts of little friendly activities you can do that aren't necessarily like, full on, I'm a 5-year-old mentally little space things, but are still feeding the inner child. I think a lot of it is if you can picture it as something that is feeding the inner child, you're basically doing something little space friendly.
That's good advice.
I love the idea of doing little space friendly things, even if I'm not like necessarily with my dom. Like I would love to go to pumpkin patches. I enjoy doing that kind of thing. I go with friends. I find that it's something that's fun to do. It's nostalgia filled. It's something I remember doing fondly as a child, and I like to do it as an adult. Going with the dom is much more meaningful, though.
Yeah,
I
would
just
probably
think
say
that
so.
there's a lot more meaning behind it if you're going as a caregiver and little. There's like a whole different element. It makes it just more fun.
It has all it feels a lot more how would I describe it? Words are hard today.
Impactful.
Yes.
There's
That
deeper
would be the
meaning
word.
to it. It's
Yeah.
like a really high level like caregiving where you're really meeting both of your needs at that point.
Exactly, because like with me, I'm a like one of my love languages is gifts and
Mm-hmm.
taking and quality time. So it fits both aspects because not only am I getting my little something that's very near and dear that they could have, like for example, like when I'm not near when I'm not there, like they can use like a cologne or something, make it smell like me, that type of thing. Like
Yeah.
it'd be a lot more sentimental
Mm-hmm.
because I specifically got it for them. you
Yes,
know
I agree. Like that's like a huge part of it. Littles in particular tend to really like having things that are like little to remember their dom by. And this is like a really big one is stuffies that smell like you or that you gave them that
Great.
have some sort of meaning. That's a very big thing. That's very important. I can actually, a lot of my stuffies, I can tell you exactly who got them for me. Even if they're not my dom, I know who got them for me. And if they told me who got them for me, I'm going to remember that. It's already something that you can do for friends, but it's a much deeper thing for your dom or your caregiver, because that's then your avatar when they're not there. There was another word I was looking for. Starts with an S, I think. You, whatever. It's a substitute for you when you're not there. Something for them to hold when they want you.
Surrogate. That's the word. That's the word you're looking for. Surrogate.
That's it. Yes, thank you. Words are fucking hard. I agree with you, Drow. I knew what I was trying to say. I just couldn't say the word. It's something that can be really, really important. And I think that a lot of what we said about subs and littles really applies also to pets, because I feel like pet play and little play are very, very similar, because a lot of times stuffies, chew toys, there's an overlap there. You don't necessarily have to get dog toys for your sub who's trying to be a puppy. You can very much so do little space and pet space at the same time for a lot of people, because a lot of it's a lot of overlap, but there does tend to be a lot more laying at your feet in pet space as opposed to, cuddling on a couch.
Which, speaking of, it's probably a good point to segue into pets and pet space. So I would say pet space in a way is kind of very similar to little space in that, if little space is the point of someone acting childish to, whatever degree they wish, then pet space is like the equivalent of someone acting more like your pet to whatever
Yes.
equivalent degree that you
I
would
would
want
think
that
that
to go
there's
to.
a lot of overlap. I will say, full disclosure, I am not a pet. I only know a little bit about it. I have a lot of experience with seeing it and interacting with pets, but I don't think anyone here is actually a pet, or any of us actually into pet play really big. I don't.
On the master side, I have been.
Okay, so you probably know a bit more about it in practice than I do. I've seen a lot of it. It's not personally my thing. I don't want to be dehumanized to that level. Dehumanized, yes, but lose my agency altogether. I feel like that's kind of the danger of pet play for me personally. But I think the pet play can be really cute. I personally like the idea of sleeping in a cage, but I feel like that's also not super my thing. I've seen some really, really cute things. A lot of things that I've seen in terms of pet play is very cutesy and little anyway. Like
I would
dog
agree with that. Yeah.
beds that are huge and frilly with pink ribbons and lights. And they're super nice, but they're still, it's still pet play. You're still the puppy sleeping in the cage.
Yep.
And I think there's a huge overlap. The reason I wanted to do these both at the same time is, first of all, they tend to be, I wouldn't say necessarily smaller subjects than talking about subs and brats and doms, but they are so overlapping in topic that I felt like it would be pretty okay to lump them together. I was hoping we were going to be able to get a guest tonight, but I don't think any of us had time to actually seek anyone out this week.
No, my new job kind of cut that in half.
And I was sick. Full disclosure, everyone, I've had pneumonia and I have been not around very much.
She's been dying.
I have been slowly dying for the last 3-4 weeks now. It's fine. We're finally doing better, so we're good. Yeah,
Don't
R.I.P.
worry. Yeah, we'll arrange your stuffies at your funeral around your casket.
Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate that. I expect them all to be buried with me, so I'll need a really large casket.
Oh,
so
that's dark.
figure that
Do they
out.
know that? Have you told them that?
I'm pretty sure that they'll be happy to defend my grave as much as they've defended my bed.
I don't know. That's pretty Ramses the second of you.
Wouldn't think Ramses the second was necessarily the best example, but there's definitely a lot of examples of Viking burials.
Now, I imagine somebody robbing your grave and you just haunting them because they took one of your stuffies.
Yep. Forget Egyptian hauntings. The biggest threat to you is if you rob a little's grave. You'll never recover.
Yeesh. That's horrifying to think about. A little bratty ghost following you around.
Worse than a poltergeist by far.
I don't care about a poltergeist knocking a cup over. I don't care, but I don't hear every time I do something. Oh, that's the best you can do. You can't do it any better than that. That'd be rough.
Every time you take some personal time, somebody is critiquing you, and it sounds exactly like Brat.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I've enjoyed doing pet play before. I mean, I would say a lot of little interaction that I've had. It's all about a lot of the verbal interaction between me and who my partner was at that minute. Where a lot of pet play is also, I mean, verbal interaction is important there too, but it's also about the non-verbal interaction. Because they're a pet, they're not going to respond back traditionally
right.
in pet play. So there's a lot of physicality that comes into it. I would almost say normal pet play is halfway in between the primal kind of stuff.
Yes.
Because pet play is just very nice. They're your pet. You're treating them like a normal house pet. Where primal, you're animals in the fucking wild. So pet play is kind of a not as extreme version of that kind of. And then, like you said, there's also a lot of cute things associated with it. A lot of people like to wear ears. I'm a big fan of public plug tails. That's yeah. So that's good stuff.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of that, but I think that there's a lot of overlap with being little in general, because I definitely have ears. I don't have any super fancy ears, and I kind of wish I did. But like, I absolutely have ears, and a lot of them are gifts, just because people like to have me take pictures in ears, which understandable, I guess, you know. But I also enjoy the idea of collars and leashes and all that. But I don't really go into full pet play, because for me, I'm not going to sit there and pretend to be a kitten or a puppy. That's not really my thing. I get it for people who are, but I think that there is a lot of overlap up until there's actually acting like a pet. I
Yeah.
have heard, I have heard of extremes where kind of like littles can wear diapers, that there are pee pads and poo pads for pets,
Yep, you would
and
be
I feel
correct.
like that's a bit far from me.
No, I've
But
never I've never gone that far either, but yeah. But
yeah,
it definitely exists. There are
yeah.
definitely people that want to go
I
that
do want
far
to
and do.
acknowledge. I do want to acknowledge that there is an extreme that most people don't go to, but it does exist. And I definitely would say at that point the similarities with standard issue little have ended. But I would say a lot of people who are into pet play also fit well into little spaces. If there's a little space, a lot of times a pet will actually fit into those very well. And you do tend to see a lot of overlap, where a lot of littles are pets and a lot of pets are little. How
Yeah,
far they take it in
for
either
sure.
extreme can be very different person to person. But I think there is a lot of overlap. And in the same way, you're losing a degree of your agency by engaging in that type of play, which is why I think there's also um, a big consideration to be made, that they're both very similar to a degree. I would argue that pet play is a bit more extreme, because you're at that point kind of losing your human agency as opposed to losing your adult agency. I think it's a bit more extreme for some people. It is for me. I wouldn't personally go that far. And that's a large part of my hesitation, is I don't want to necessarily lose my humanity in the role play. But I also kind of really get why people would. It is a type of objectification that can be really hot if that's what you're into.
I mean, I actually think about the other way around. I think little space is a little bit more extreme than pet space, only because there is people do actually mentally regress, and it's always a danger if you've had someone who has done that before.
True.
Whether that's an issue that's been gone, where people don't regress into being pets. That is still full on just role play. Where
That's true.
I feel like the chance of you being unable to keep your consent, and that is much better than in little space, where there's a pretty good chance if you end up regressing that you lose that consent entirely, and that ability to control yourself. So I do think pet spaces I like a little bit safer, at least in my opinion. But then, I mean,
I can see that.
underneath that, I do agree that it is much more objectifying, because I mean, we are playing that they're not a person anymore, so like by definition it's more of an objectification thing, which is what I've enjoyed it for.
Yeah. I will
Not.
say, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I'm not. I mean, the pet thing is fun, but to me, it's like the control is the only reason why I ever
Yeah.
have been involved in it, because that's a big thing for me. So, and I like doing training and obedience training and stuff like that, and so like that meshes really well. It's not necessary. That is in a totally separate topic than pet space, but it meshes very very well.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's definitely a lot of overlap there, and you can do that a lot with littles too, where you're
Yep.
still technically training them in a way. You're teaching them lessons and giving them rules and boundaries, and all of those things like very much so overlap. It's just how you play that's different. Um,
Yep.
I will say I did mention the sticky scenarios and possible problems with little space, and I did want to mention with pet play. A lot of people's issue with pet play is that it is bordering on bestiality, and some people take issue with that. I think that's more of a stretch, because like obviously just because you're fucking somebody who's pretending to be a cat doesn't mean you're actually going to go fuck a cat. Like this is not the same thing. So I kind of don't see the argument for that one quite as much, but I do want to acknowledge that this is an argument that I have heard that people take issue with.
Yeah, that's kind of that's a huge stretch.
It is. It really is. I've heard some people take issues with pony play that way. We barely even mentioned pony play, but that's a whole thing. There's a whole field of pony play. I've heard that with pony play. I've heard that with puppy play. Not so much with kitty play, but I've heard that. But a lot of people who, a lot of the complaints I've heard with pet play are, oh, well, it's dangerously close to bestiality. And I'm like,
It's not.
it's really not. But there is, I can see the argument if it's something that's super triggering to you, I guess.
Well, as far as pony play goes, I should say there's a great episode of My Strange Addiction all about pony play. That is
I
combination.
remember that one.
Oh my god, it's at once like it's not a very good education on the subject. Let's say it is
No.
kind of a mix of horrifying and comedic, and they don't really put the people doing it in any kind of good light. But then they also pick. Like these people are into pony play in that episode, like Revolutionary War reenactors are into reenacting the revolution. Like they are so hard for it that
Yeah.
it is almost hard to take seriously. So, but it is an entertaining episode to watch. But no, here's the thing though. So when it comes to little space, pedophilia is a thing, and it's a big problem in our society, right? Bestiality, not so much, which is why I think it's a little different saying like someone coming into little space and then doing that because, you know, they want to be fucking minors and they can't. You don't really have that risk. There's not like a ton of bestiality people going out there and being like, oh, I'm just going to get into pet play instead. That's not how I think that's not like a risk that's going to come up. I don't think in pet play.
It's an argument I've heard. I'm not necessarily saying there's credibility to it, but I do want to acknowledge that I did acknowledge the other arguments that I've heard. I did want to acknowledge this one as well. To say that I think that it's as valid is not true. I think that there is a lot more problems to that argument. I can see that argument, especially for somebody who finds it super triggering. I can. But I feel like it's much harder for me to sympathize with. Like, if that makes sense. Like, I get it, but I also am like, yeah, I mean, I'm personally not going to go to bat to defend this particular claim, but like, I get it.
So just to follow the same lines of conversations we did in Little Space, what are some things that someone might be into and not realize that would like kind of make them more of a pet? Like what might you be doing that might thrust you into that space without knowing about it?
Sleeping at their dom's feet. I've actually seen that a lot with people who don't realize that it's a very pet playish thing to do. Some people go really, really quiet and just like want to be very physical. And some people like they get into like wearing cat ears and cat girl play without realizing they're necessarily getting into pet play at that point. Like just because you're not calling it pet play doesn't mean it's not kind of pet play at that point. When you're wearing your cat ears to get fucked, you want to imagine yourself as a cat girl. You're kind of into pet play at that point, whether you realize it or not. Or people who are super into tail plugs, and not just specifically plugs, but specifically they want tail plugs. Then you're getting into, whether you're calling it pet play or not, you're kind of into pet play at that point. You could just do a regular plug, but that's not what you want. You want the fluffy tail plug. So,
well, yeah, why not plug plus upgrade? Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, an argument I totally get, but also like at that point you have to.
And then you can tug on your partner's tail in public. You know, doing something naughty, just give it a nice little tug. That's great. That's good stuff. Who doesn't want that?
That's true. That's true. I could go on to a deep dive conversation I had the other day. I was looking into something about plugs specifically, and I found out that pussy plugs exist. I did not know that was a thing, and they're not actually the same as butt plugs. That's an entire different conversation we will have to have another time. But it blew my mind because I somehow did not know that was a thing. I did not know it was a thing. It blew my mind. I was like, what? And there's not very many out there, but I did find a girl who actually, like, imagine being the girl whose job was to review these.
Oh, I totally can.
That's what she does for a living, and I'm just like,
yeah. Are you telling me that you've never like tried to find a sex toy and then actually like went to read like professional reviews about it? I always read the professional reviews.
I was reading the professional reviews, and this girl had got the entire size collection and like literally test rode them on her bicycle, and I'm like, that is commitment, and I admire you. Good job.
That is commitment. God damn.
I got a kick out of it, and this is a major tangent, but like
Her
I was talking about plugs, and that was what
Wait,
my brain
wait,
went
are
to.
you testing them on her bicycle? No one asked her to do that. She chose to do that.
She did that on
That's
her
not a
own, and that is
job. That's a
commitment.
hobby. Yes, exactly.
That is commitment. And she was like, I decided that the medium-sized one was the best one to ride on my bike, and I was like, ma'am,
Goddamn.
thank you for letting me know this information that I never sought out, but I'm also highly amused that you
No
felt the
tears.
need to report this in your review. Thank you.
Yeah, no
I thank you
kidding.
for your hard work.
So,
I
and
was
then to continue that thought, what are some things you can do with your pet if you end up partnered with them? I'll say on my part, just the kind of playing around you do with your normal pet. Actually,
yeah.
wrestle with them, push them
Also,
around, pet them, rub their belly.
collaring in general.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Collaring is a huge
Collaring
thing.
is a
That
big
is
thing. Yeah.
as
And
much
that
as a
crosses the
stuffy
lines
as a
of
baby.
all of the sub
No,
levels.
yeah, that's true. But it's very, very important in pet play in particular. As
Yep.
much as, a little would really appreciate a stuffy from you, the thing that a pet would really like is a collar, and a nice one.
Exactly.
You get your pet play stubby a collar, and like I would love a collar too, but somebody who's into pet play, that is a big thing. That is like a core metric of being into pet play is the collar. Like I don't know a single sub who doesn't love a collar or a harness that is into pet play. And
Damn right.
it's a huge thing. And basically the same thing. Like you would do all the same things you would with their little, but if you're there wearing a collar, it makes it more meaningful.
You
Just
can also
like
get
taking your dog on a walk, you're taking them somewhere, and it's very special because they're wearing their collar, marking you as theirs, and that's a big thing in pet play.
You can also help them accessorize, get different animal ears,
Oh
different
yeah.
animal tails, and stuff like that. Actually, you mentioned thinking about getting better ears. I mean, you know how expensive the good ones are. Like, oh my
They're
fucking
so
god,
expensive.
it's ridiculous.
That's why I don't have very many expensive or very many nice ones. I have very cheap ears that were given to me as a gift at another point, but I don't have any nice ears because those things are ungodly expensive. Like a good set's
Oh
like
yeah,
what, $80 for a set? Like
yep,
that's a relatively reasonably priced set. And those
yep.
don't even have matching tails. And some of them with matching tails, that'll
That's
run you like $200 minimum.
that's the step above the cheap ones. Is what that is,
Yeah,
$80. And
yeah.
that's
Like
gonna be
80
coming
bucks
from
is
like
like
Hong
a
Kong for
reasonable
$85.
yeah,
Yeah, oh yeah.
80
If you
bucks
if
is
you
reasonably priced.
I've seen them go up to like $350 if you want like
Yeah,
a
I've
really
seen
nice pair.
really nice ears. And if you're getting a matching set with a plug too, I mean, that can cost you several hundred. Like a
Oh
really
yeah.
nice tail. Because tails are so nice. You get the really nice ones. I've seen some really fucking nice tails. Would I ever spend $500 for that tail? Not a fucking chance. But,
Yep.
it's a really nice tail, and I can admire that craftsmanship.
There's also some other classic things. You can stick a pet bed underneath your desk. That's a classic
Hmm.
joke when it comes to
Yeah. I mean,
pets.
it's a joke, but it's also kind of hot. Like, I can see it.
Oh
I'm not even into
yes,
pet play, and I kind of like that
100%.
idea. It's
Uh,
hot, and I get it, and a really nice pet bed too. You don't want to you don't want to cheap out on that because like get something orthopedic for your sub. For Christ's sake, just be
oh,
nice.
100%. And
Get
then who
something
knows?
nice.
Yeah, and then that's always the fun. You're sitting there at your desk doing stuff, maybe even talking to people on the computer, and then they just reach up. It's good stuff.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
you could also do obedience training. That's
The
another thing
cage.
I've always liked to do. Oh yeah, the cage is another thing. Get a cage
Yeah,
with
the
a
cage
bed
training's
and
a good
whatnot.
one.
Yep. Yep.
And you don't want
Absolutely.
to get a small one because you are just being abusive at that point. Get a nice sized cage that your sub will fit nicely in. Really get it nice. You don't want it to be too hard to sleep in because pet cages are not comfortable. So you want to make sure you've got a really nice bed in the bottom. But some subs are super into that. They want to go in their cage and curl up and sleep while their dom's doing whatever they're doing.
I actually wholeheartedly recommend. I think it's PetSmart sells an $80 cage that it folds flat completely. You can travel with it if you want, and it is a very large size aluminum cage. The nice
Hmm.
matte solid floor. You can put whatever bed in there you want.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, it
And if you look
has a front
online,
door open, and then it has a huge like massive side door too. So it's pretty convenient. And if you look online, Mouse, you were saying?
I disconnected there for a sec. I am so sorry.
All good. You were about to say something about if you look online.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you look at pet play pages or pet play cages online, you would see some really nice ones. They really go all out decorating those,
Oh yeah, I believe it.
like the pink with the curtains and the ribbons and the stuffies and the lights. I mean, they're really nice, some of these, and it's I'm really impressed by some of them because like I really like little space stuff. Like I don't know if I would necessarily do like a fully pink room because like even I get pinked out. Pink is my favorite color. And even I get pinked out by some little space stuff. But like I really like the aesthetic of some of these dog beds that I've seen. Like I'm not into pet play, and even I'm just like, you know what? I wouldn't be mad. I wouldn't be mad.
I wouldn't be mad.
Like
That's fair.
you gotta admire. Like that's really nice.
I mean, if you had a pet cage, you could make your bed out of stuffies with how many stuffies you have, and you just roll around in them in your bed.
Would all my stuffies sit in the cage? Not a fucking chance. Not a fucking chance.
Some of them, the elite few.
Yeah, some of them would. Like I just looked it up. Like I sleep in a dog crate. It's not a fetish. It's therapy. And I would argue that yeah, the same way Little Space is, some people really do see pet play as a form of therapy for themselves. And this picture's super fucking cute. She's got her little pigtails in, her comfy sweater, and it's a dog crate full of pillows and blankets and stuffies, and it's got all sorts of flowers and lights. And that's the kind of aesthetic that I see a lot of, where I argue strongly there is a big overlap between like little space aesthetic and pet play aesthetic. I think that there is a lot of overlap in these.
Yeah. And I agree with you completely. I think you're right.
Did I actually Google this and get a whole bunch of not safe for work answers? Yes, the fuck I did.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. So I think that's the gist of it. I don't really have much else to go over there. I mean, pet. If we didn't say it, by the way, I think you could be anything as a pet, whatever kind of animal you want to be. I think Mouse mentioned it, and there's pony play, there's kitty play, there's there's everything under the sun.
Asked me if the reason I have Mouse as my name is that like I role play as Mouse. I don't. It's literally just a joke on my smut posting name. I go by a Nani Mouse, and therefore Mouse was what people started calling me. And yeah, so I'm Mouse, but I'm not actually into being a mouse. So please do not make this misconception, because it gets really awkward when people start to like send me like unsolicited sexy role plays about me being a mouse. It's really weird. Don't do that, please. Really
that
weird.
Sounds weird in general. Like, why would you do something like that unsolicited, anyways?
Look,
like that's, that's like
one of these days we'll have to come up with an excuse for me to go over a podcast episode of all the weird unsolicited shit that I've gotten. Because it's a long
for
fucking
sure.
list.
That would be amazing. That's funny.
Not just messages. Do you have any idea how many unsolicited sex toys I've gotten that were not on my wish list? They were not on my wish list, but somebody figured out that if you added something to the cart with another Amazon item, they could send it to me.
But Drow, notice how she says unsolicited, but she doesn't say unwanted.
Exactly.
Okay, I have some really weird shit. Like I have a bag. I have a bag with a lock that I keep under my bed full of weird shit people have sent me that I'm not really sure what to do with, and I'm not going to acknowledge it exists.
I'm betting there's an ovipositor in there.
You could totally.
I am shocked that I have not gotten one, because I have a whole joke about weaponized ovipositors as a means of home defense. Actually, kind of shocked that I haven't gotten one yet. Honestly. Have I not told ovipositors joke? Because I feel like maybe I haven't told you guys about this.
Well, now I think you and I had a conversation about that once, but now Joe and I know what we're getting you for Christmas.
Exactly.
And I will have to figure out a way to connect it to an air hose so we have a weapon.
Yep.
True American fashion.
All right. Well, yeah. I mean, as it should be. I mean, come on. If we can make potato guns work, we can make ovipositor guns work. All right. It's just come on.
That was the whole argument with the ovipositors. I was like, it's basically just a lubed up potato gun.
Yep, that is correct.
Yes.
You just gotta stick an air pressure hose to it, seal it somehow, and then turn up that PSI.
Imagine being that guy who went to prison with a black eye, and they asked like, "What the fuck happened to you?" Well, I broke into a house, and the bitch she had an ovipositor.
Oh man.
Imagine being that
man.
All right.
He would never be safe.
So let's round this out. What are we talking about in 2 weeks?
We had an idea that we were talking about, and I don't remember what it was. Do you remember what it was last time? We floated a couple of ideas.
Oh shit, no I don't.
we had a couple of ideas that we brought up the time before and the time before that, and we ended up talking about littles and little space and headspaces last time. I don't know that we've gotten all that much into. What was the one I wanted to talk about? We could talk about monster fucking to really round out the Halloween season.
Oh, monster fucking.
yes.
All right. All
time.
right. We'll do monster fucking in 2 weeks.
For the Halloween season.
Oh, God. All right. That's fine with me.
That sounds like a fun one.
Since we're talking about ovipositors, it does fit.
Oh, yeah, it does fit.
Now we get to talk more about ovipositors.
Oh man, I'll try and find a guest for that, but I don't. How the fuck? What do I?
Oh no, I can find a guest for that.
Okay, good. Please do.
Literally, my server, we have a whole selection of monster fuckers in my server.
Oh my god.
I am unfortunate. I am one of those types of people, so it's okay.
Oh my god.
Look, I'm not gonna sit here and say that I'm not a little bit into technicals, because who isn't?
Oh my god, you're both sitting there watching Monster Musume, aren't you? You sons of a bitches.
I really am not, but I'm not gonna say I'm not into it because it's kind of hot. I'm just shrugging here.
I don't judge, but I judge. I don't judge, but I judge.
Welcome to the kink community. We are all just
I'm just ashamed. I can't live up to it. I'm not an 8 foot tall monster with tentacle penis arms. I can't. It's just unrealistic expectations.
Exactly.
Unrealistic body image expectations.
That's my problem with it. I'll never be able to grow a 13-inch cock that deposits eggs. It's just I can't do that.
The next hot surgery in plastic surgery communities. How do I get an egg that lays, or a penis that lays eggs? I need to know. I just can't meet this bitch's needs without it. How do I do it? I'm waiting for that post on Reddit about a doctor just concerned and really considering changing career path. I want to see that. I spend a lot of time in medical Twitter. Let me see. I've heard some weird shit, and I'm waiting to see that post.
Medical Twitter is really funny.
Medical Twitter, medical Reddit. I spend a lot of time in both. For those who don't know, I have very specific degrees in biology and immunology. So I spend a lot of time discussing like immunology and weird biological concepts with people, doctors, researchers, whatever. Because not only am I into kink, I'm actually, pretty good with science. But also, I'm really into kink and have some really weird kinks. But I digress. I have found some really, really interesting, obviously kink-related, concerned doctors who were just like, I have no idea what's happening. What do I say to these people?
The doctors need an adult.
She says the back of her throat hurts. How do I tell her that it's because she's deep throating guys every day?
How do I tell her that I don't think that it's safe for her to continue this?
Oh, fuck.
That I don't think that they should continue, size training their ass because they're beginning to have incontinence issues. Like, how do I tell them that?
Oh, man.
Is the kind of thing you see on that side of Reddit and Twitter, honestly.
That's great. That's really great. All right. So we'll wrap this up here then. So I can't believe I have to say this. Monster fucking will be in 2 weeks.
Monster fucking 2 weeks. Not even the topic. Just fucking monsters.
Monster fucking. Yep, that's right. And I guess we'll call that the Halloween episodes. And I hope you guys enjoyed. If you enjoyed listening to us, like and subscribe. Click those links down below if you want to join the Discord community, talk to us live, or just come hang out in the Discords, and we'll see you guys next time. Have a good night.
Cool. Sure, we're not all this weird. It's just us.